Welcome to the Flow State Podcast. We are your hosts,
Norah Candito
and Monica Grohne. Let's get into the flow. All right, today I am so excited. We have an amazing guest, Jaime Gordon, who is the Unstuckologist on Instagram. She is a professionally trained transformational life coach. She has been my life coach, and working with her has created unbelievable unlocks for me. She spent a decade stuck in her own anxiety and learned what worked and what didn't. And she now coaches others like me on how to get unstuck so that they can create the life that they want. Jaime, welcome. Thanks for being here with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to hear a little bit more about your story. You and I have worked together. We met earlier this year in March at Susie School. And immediately I felt such a great connection with you. I feel like I walked into the room and you started grilling me and I was like, wait, who is this person?
I did kind of grill you that first night, which is fun. It's like play for me. I'm sure it didn't feel that way for you.
Well, at the time I was like, I didn't know if you were another attendee or if you were a coach. And I was like, wow, she's really getting into it with me. But I personally haven't learned a lot about your story. So I'm super excited to hear a little bit more about kind of your experience and what led you to do the work that you do today.
Yeah. So I spent, like you said, about a decade battling my own anxiety and depression. And it was something that I just thought was my lot in life. I've got a lot of family history. And so, they say, well, it runs in the family and it is what it is. And what I realized was that that's actually not true. But it's like one of those things that feels so true that you can easily just ride that wave. And it was miserable, right? Like I would spend, just these seasons where I was so anxious, or I would start to feel anxious in my body and not even know, and then I would start searching for why was I anxious? And then my brain would start to loop on the anxious thought, or wake up in the middle of the night and literally be telling myself brain, don't turn on, don't turn on, don't turn on. Because I didn't want the anxiety and the looping to start. And so it really was one of the things that I used to just sidestep a lot of really great decisions in my life, to try to choose the thing that was the safest, the most predictable, the thing that felt the most controllable. And so I like to say I'm a recovering play it safe-aholic. So I to the point of when I was in college, I faked my internship. And my husband signed up with the school. He had his own business, so technically I guess it wasn't faking it, but because I didn't want I was I'm not going to know what I'm doing, which by nature interns don't know what they're doing, right? And I would just choose the things that would feel the least scary to do, which led me to wait tables for even after I graduated. I started to work for my husband and try to do jobs that were just kind of fell in my lap versus ones I really wanted to go for. In fact, it kind of even shut down the ability to dream, because dreaming was dangerous because it required me to do something new. And when you're anxious, you want things to be the most controlled as you possibly can. You just want to not have the conversations in your head because you have this experience of getting stuck in that discomfort. And of course, by resisting it, it only grows and starts to take over more of your life. And the more you try to not be with your emotions, it's kind of like stepping on the trash can. Eventually the trash can is going to be completely full. And that's where I like to say that's where depression comes in. We've stepped on the trash can, we've repressed emotions for so long that there is no other choice but for your body to basically implode. And it's tricky, right? You feel completely stuck. So I literally just felt so stuck all the time. And I didn't think that there was anything I could do about it. I thought that this is just the way my body is. This is the way my brain is. This is the way my husband is. He's a free spirit. He's an entrepreneur and it's so stressful. And if he would just have a normal 9-to-5 job, I would be okay. And I would just kind of blame everything outside of me, thinking that was true. Like, I didn't question it, just felt freaking true. I had lots of evidence that it was true, and it didn't make me one bit happier.
Yeah. So how did you move from that place of stuck, anxious, and believing that that was your truth to transforming and then even becoming a coach?
Yeah. Well, really, it was getting to the point where my place of discomfort was greater than the pain of growing. Like, I wasn't going to move on. I would have stayed that way forever if it had just been tolerable. And it got to a point where it wasn't tolerable anymore. And that's when I began to actually do some work. And I started seeing a therapist, and I started to do some reading, and that started to shift for me. It was very slow. I wasn't really given tools. It was like I was absorbing tools slowly over time in therapy. And so it's very, very slow moving. But I was still very much in a victim mindset, very much so. And so that also makes it super slow to move. And then when I started to, I had some like relief from the anxiety and depression. My kids were getting older, and I realized like if I am 90 and I turn around, I'm going to regret never building the life that I wanted. Like, it never even occurred to me to like dream up the life that I wanted past, like, by the time I had kids, it was like I just like put pause in all my dreams. And I was like, okay, I have no idea what I want to do, where I want to go. And I started working with a transformational coach. And that's when I really, like, it was like putting gasoline on a fire of growth, because I was able to see and question, and I was given tools to work with for myself, versus just kind of like sitting in an office and having this like soft space to like work tools with someone. And then I got angry, because it was like, there are keys to the kingdom, but nobody gives them to you. Like, no one teaches you how to do it yourself. And even if you go to say, and you work on anxiety, or you Google anxiety, they teach you how to treat the symptoms, not the causes. Like, they teach you how to work through a panic attack. They teach you how to do some thought training to change the anxious thoughts, but they don't actually teach you, like, what are the things that are leading to the anxiety. Let's deal with those so that they're not this isn't like long term, this isn't you, right? This is something that we practice. It's a great avoidance strategy. There was a lot of things I was getting from it that I couldn't see. And so when I started to learn those tools, I realized this isn't just for anxiety, this is freaking everything. This is how we get unstuck. It's just that the more stuck you get, the more like, and you don't deal with it, the backlog of it starts to create the anxiety and the depression.
Yeah, I mean,
so relatable.
It's so relatable. And it comes back to like everything, whether it's mental well-being. And obviously here we talk about menstrual wellness, and it's the same in that industry where you're given, a Band-Aid solution, birth control, to treat your symptoms, and we're not treating the root cause. And I know in my healing, like, struggling with PMDD is a very emotional disorder. And Jaime, the work you and I have done together is probably some of the best work that I've done for my PMDD, because I now have tools to manage those emotional changes and have some kind of inner dialogue with myself around what actually is true for me in those moments and what is really happening, and being able to separate like what I think is happening from an actual real situation. So you talk about learning some of those tools, and like, do you have any examples that you could share for what some of those tools are in terms of dealing with anxiety? Norah, what were you going to say?
I've been hearing, and maybe this will be part of your answer, but I've been hearing a lot of people talking about rewiring, and just like kind of the unlearning part, and then being able to acknowledge kind of like what that catalyst is. I don't know. Is that something that you could speak to, or maybe that's even part of what you were going to talk about now?
Yes. So I want you to think that like a lot of the coping mechanisms that we created long, long ago, they were to meet a need. And it was you trying to love you and get your needs met. But as an adult, they're almost just like maladaptive coping mechanisms. It's you trying to love you, but in the most painful, destructive way. And one of those ways is like anxiety, like I want you to think like anxiety is like you having all these conversations in your head that you're not having. And if you have one, like you just like, it's like they're shouting at you. And as soon as you can't like set it down, right? It's just like, it's nagging. So you just get stuck and marinated in those thoughts. And one of the tools is just to stop and notice where you are. Like, because we can't transform anything that we can't see. And there's lots of times where we're just all of a sudden barking at somebody and we're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why did I just bark at somebody? Like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious, right? And unless your emotions are just, they want language wrapped around them, or they want to be released somatically. Like if we do neither of them, it's like we have a kid in the car screaming at us, and they keep screaming at us, and they keep screaming at us, like they're trying to tell us something, and we're ignoring them driving in the car, right? Our drive is miserable. And meanwhile, the kid probably has some good information, but we are terrified to turn around and like listen to the kid. So there's the retraining of what started out as this you observing and going like, ooh, this is lovable about me. Ooh, this is painful when I do that. That's not going to work. This is going to work, right? We start to basically turn into these little like intuitive manipulators. And what becomes habit then, right? When they talk about wiring, right? It becomes this like super highway in your brain. And now it's automatic. It's default. We don't have to think about it. I remember when I was little thinking, if I go clean up the family room, then I ask my mom if I can go to my friend's house, like she's going to say yes, right? Like in my mind, I was already working her. And so like, what does that look like as an adult? That was a conscious decision, right? As an adult, well, that's a form of codependency. It's me looking on how do I go outside here and soothe everybody around me so that I get the best version of them so I get my needs met, right? I learned how to outsource my needs so that I could get my own needs met versus directly asking for my needs, which I experienced as not working as a kid. So like the rewiring is very much a part of it. But I think that there is also just I would say like a huge tool is accepting where you are. Like we resist where we are and we judge where we are, and that will, it's like adding a waiting room to where you don't want to be. So like if I am judging myself for like, maybe I'm calling myself lazy, right? Because I'm procrastinating on something. So I'm in judgment of my procrastination and I'm calling myself, I'm so inconsistent. I can't do anything. It's so hard. It's easier for other people. Whatever all these complaints are in my head, right? I'm judging where I'm at. So not only am I procrastinating, but now I've ensured that I stay there because I'm in judgment. I'm not accepting it. As soon as I accept like, hey, I'm procrastinating. And I go, yep, that's what I'm doing. And I release the judgment and I actually have compassion because remember, it's me trying to love me in a maladaptive way. It's like, oh, me is trying to love me in a way that's not real helpful. As soon as I can accept that I'm there and not judge that I'm there, now possibilities open up for me. I'm not in that waiting room. I can choose to get out of it. Just like if we're in anxiety and we're in judgment over other people can just be like, I don't understand. It's so hard for me. They don't get it. I'm terrified. Why is it so hard for me? I just want to, right? All of the judgments. I'm weak. I'm whatever. It just doubles down on the thing that we don't want. When we start to accept and forgive where we are, that's when we have like a little gateway to choose something new.
We're so critical of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So critical. I remember in some of our work, like giving yourself, you told me giving yourself forgiveness is not excusing or like not getting over it. Can you maybe touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So the cool part about forgiveness is that like when we are in unforgiveness towards ourselves, don't you think of it like tying a chain around our ankle and like taking a stake and driving it to the ground and keeping us exactly in that space that we don't want to be in. So we can only go we can circle around it, right? But we can't go out of it. When we forgive ourselves, we're not saying that we didn't do the thing that we've staked ourselves in the ground. We're not saying that it didn't hurt. didn't cause pain. We're not saying that it wasn't a big deal. We're not saying that it didn't let people down, let you down, that you didn't cut. What it's saying is I'm choosing to not hold it against me anymore. I'm choosing to release it. And so do you think, like, if I have a fear of failure, I probably have some unforgiveness towards me when I failed, when I perceived a failure. And so I'm going to be, anytime there's an opportunity for me to fail going forward, I'm going to, maybe even not see the opportunity for success. I'm going to make it, I don't want to ever experience the failure, so I probably am not going to try. Right? So I've got myself anchored to that unforgiveness. And forgiveness is not just like a once and done. It is a constant attitude. That's not me. That is, I believe, Martin Luther King, who said it is a state of mind. It's a constant attitude. So what you think, like, if there is unforgiveness, which we generally do have, not necessarily consciously, but if we're like, this thing's really hard, right? There might just be some unforgiveness there towards ourselves, towards other people, that keep us stuck in the same situation that we don't want. It's cruel, right?
Yeah.
But when we release it, right, moment by moment, layer by layer, then new possibilities open up. It's almost like we're clouded by the unforgiveness, because the unforgiveness generally have judgments. Like, I can forgive myself for the offense of procrastinating, right? But I also, if I really want to forgive and I really want to change where I'm going, forgiving what I judge myself to be. Like, I forgive myself for being this thing, right? I release this need to have that identity. I don't have to, like, that biological filter. Your brain's always looking for information to confirm and be right about yourself. Like, when we release the judgment, we allow our brain to start looking for new possibilities, allow us to show up in a new way.
I think a lot of times too, when we're looking to forgive ourselves or thinking about forgiving ourselves, we have a lot of language around that of, like, I should have done this, or I could have, or like I have to, or in that language, I think can be really harmful. And I know that you like to turn those phrases around. So when we're in a state of, like, for instance, I know just some of our audience listening is probably like relating this to healing journeys and feeling like, last month I really messed up because I wasn't sleeping right and I wasn't eating right and I should have done this, and, really shaming themselves. And I am not a healthy person. Like, I am infertile, or, like putting a lot of labels on themselves. And so how can we reframe some of those shameful kind of phrases?
Yeah. It's interesting. Language is super powerful. So don't you think that your brain is like a trailer that follows a truck, right? So, like, your brain is the trailer and the truck is your language. Your brain follows where your language goes. So when your word choices are actually really important, because one, it'll reveal how things occur to you automatically. So if you say, I should have, when you hear should, ought, supposed to, those are actually signs of shame and a victim mindset, right? The power is outside of you. I should have done, right? I ought to, you ought to, right? There is a victim mindset at play. And when we're in that space, like, the possibilities we see will not be the possibilities we see when we're in an ownership and responsibility mindset. Just won't be. So when we choose a different word, not that we shouldn't say should, right? But when we choose to say, I chose to, or I did that, there is an ownership, right? I'm not victim to myself. I'm not shaming and prosecuting myself. I'm owning what I did, right? And even in that is a place of, I'm starting to accept what I chose, right? So I'm already in that space of trying to move towards self-acceptance and love, and and I think people might hear that and go, but if I just accepted everything that I did, I would do nothing. And the reality is that's not true. As long as you're clear about what you're committed to, the more you can own and release and forgive and accept yourself, you will move with much more ease and you will move faster. When you are shooting on yourself, you'll move, but it'll feel like you're wearing cement shoes. And, like, you get to choose, like, do I want to dangle a carrot or do I want to freaking chase myself with a bat? And your language choices are revealing I'm chasing myself with a bat. No wonder I'm not motivated. Like, do you want to show up for somebody who is constantly critical? Or do you want to show up for somebody who's really encouraging and appreciates you? Like, think about who you would perform for better and enjoy it and be authentic about it. Somebody who nothing is ever good enough and expects perfection and shoulds on you, you're going to be like, I don't even want to go and do the thing with that person. She's mean. Like, we do that to us. And we wonder, like, why we get unmotivated and why we, you know, let's say, okay, last month I know that when I sleep so many hours every night, that's resourceful. I know that when I don't eat sugar, that helps with my mood. I know that when I eat enough protein or I take my supplements, that I have more energy. And I chose not to. And I like to say no bad, right? It's like almost like an act of forgiveness right in that moment. No bad, I get to go again. Right now, I'm poised for what I'm committed to. Okay, what do I want and need? Okay, well, what I want is to recommit right now in this moment. But when we go, oh, I should have done that, right? We'll just make ourselves pay for days. And then next time, do we want to show up for, no, we're already like marching into the principal's office, gonna get in trouble because we're gonna shit on ourselves again. No bad. We're like, we all do it. It's just whether or not we want to choose to do it differently.
Yeah.
I like that. No bad.
Yeah, no bad. It's like the best thing, you know, automatic forgiveness for yourself. And one of the huge phrases that you taught all of us at Susie School was we would say things like, I'll just say like, I am depressed, or like, I am, you know, a moody person. And you taught us what?
Up until now. So like the phrase up until now, because here's the deal. Like, you can say affirmations until you're blue in the face, and there will be part of you that feels offended because you're lying. But when we say up until now, we can say whatever comes out of our mouth that it hasn't quite parented itself to come out like from like an ownership mindset at first, right? So we're coming out as we've given our future to, I'm depressed, period. I am lazy, period. I am confused. I don't know what I want. I don't have clarity, period. Right? And when you say up until now, so you can say that whole sentence and then throw a flag on the play mentally and go up until now. And what that does is in your brain is it goes, oh, you mean there's another possibility? Because we're like quite literally creating who we are and our future every moment. So if I say, I'm just so tired all the time, up until now. As soon as I say up until now my brain starts to go, oh, I wonder if I don't have to be, like, what if I wasn't tired all the time? What if I actually have more energy than I think I do? If I had more energy, what would that look like? Is there anything that would be resourceful to bring me more energy, right? Like, your brain starts to go and ask all these questions consciously and subconsciously to give you more ideas and more resources. But as soon as we say, like, I'm always late, there's no room for, we may shame ourselves for it, or we might just say that's who I am, which is not, it's just a choice, right? No bad. We can say, oh, up until now, I am somebody who has been late. Cool. Just by saying up until now, your brain starts to process differently.
Yeah, I love that. I use that all of the time, and just like creating and opening up those possibilities changes the mindset, right? It allows you to be something that you don't believe yourself to be.
Yeah, up until then, right? Because it's true. You might be like literally running late and say, up until now I run late. You're not lying, right? Up until now, I have no self-discipline when it comes to my sleep habits. Up until now, that's been true, right? But I'm allowing myself the possibility that there could be a new choice. When I have decided that it's so, I have literally like lined out the future for me and said, that's where I'm headed. Versus like, up until now, I struggle with people pleasing. Cool. No bad.
No bad. Amazing. So one of the things that I really want to discuss is just the victim mentality, victim mindset. And maybe we can just start to dig into this a little bit by even explaining how someone could notice or become aware of them, you know, holding on to a victim mindset?
The victim mindset is so pervasive. I want you to think that I don't think I'm overstating this, that we all flow in and out of the victim mindset constantly throughout the day. So, and I think that sometimes we get like this bad taste in our mouth and we start to shame ourselves for this idea of like victim mindset, right? And that we're somehow more righteous if we're in an ownership mindset. Like if we just release the idea that one's good and one's bad, but they just bring two different futures. So like one is going to put the power inside of us, which would be an ownership mindset, and one puts the power outside of us. So one of the ways of looking for your own, where your victim story likes to come out, because it's not like, do I have that? No, everyone has this. It's a human default setting we have. And to discover like, where's mine? Where does it like to show up? One of those ways is to look at, what do I complain about? What am I complaining? How do I complain? What are the constant complaints that I may not verbally complain to somebody else, but like, what are the complaints in my head? And so it could be as like, oh, I hate cooking, right? And, or why does the laundry always have to be done? Or why can't he put his shoes, if he would just, or all my friends, they just like, I'm the one who has to reach out to them. So you think like in your complaints, there is generally the victim story. So you can make yourself victim to yourself, right? We can be in like self-shame and self-pity. We could be in complaint over somebody else when we are in an argument and we are having, this is a beautiful way that it shows up in an argument. When we are listening in a way to reply, like to rebuttal whatever they're saying, and to make sure that like our rightness is heard by them, that is a victim mindset. So like if we're in a conflict, where you and I are in a fight, like my husband and I were in a pretty good size multi-day fight recently. And we kept coming to this conversation where neither of us were really in ownership or curiosity. Mm-hmm. We were in both committed to our rightness and both in defense. So there was like, well, when you did this, blah, 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 right? That's a victim mindset. But if I say, okay, and this is really when we actually resolved the conflict, was I was ready to own my part. He was ready to own his part. So when we get in an argument, victim mindset goes to persecuting, victimhood, or enabling. That's where the victim goes, those three spots. An ownership mindset will bring challenge, coach, and own. So if I come and I say, this is what I contributed, will you forgive me? That's an ownership mindset. I can also say, requests are also in an ownership mindset. So like think of like you might be in a fight or a disagreement with like a friend. And instead of coming and making a request, like say you want her to reach out to you because you're always the one that reaches out to her. And so you're complaining in your head, you're complaining to another friend, right? She is doing this. She is doing this. My focus is on what she's doing, which might actually be true. But nobody escapes a conflict without some skin in the game. There's always, I don't want to say always, most always, you have a piece that you play. So like even like, where did I contribute to it? Mm-hmm. Maybe what you contribute is you've never asked her to reach out. And maybe where you contributed is you're complaining about it and in your own story about it and committed to being right versus being curious about why. You see how like sneaky the victim mindset is? When you say you should separate darks from whites. You should. Right? We're victim to the rule of separating from like, nope, that's right, you're wrong. We should. I have to pay my taxes. You don't have to actually. You can choose to, so you choose not to go to jail. You could choose to pay your taxes so you don't have a lot of interest and penalties. You get to choose to. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to eat healthy. You don't have to get a good night's sleep. You choose to. You want to. You commit to. You're committed to. Those are all places of ownership versus victimhood. And it feels very different because if you feel like you have to, oh, I have to go pick up the kids. I have to stop what I'm doing and do that thing. No, I'm choosing to. I'm choosing to. Nobody is making me. I am choosing. I'm stewarding myself. I'm choosing to. And when we come from like, oh, it's my choice. Like nobody's making me. I don't want to. Okay, cool. What do I want? And I step into ownership. And it has to be in your power. That's the thing about what do I want? Well, I want him to, blah, blah, blah. Cool. I want me to. That's where I get my ownership. That doesn't mean that we like abdicate other people of the responsibility, because what you might ask actually be is like, I need to make a request. I need to set a boundary that's within my power to withhold. Mm-hmm. I need to ask them to own their part. I need to ask them to ask for forgiveness. Those are all places where we get to own.
And can we be in a victim mentality with something that isn't another person? Like, for instance, an illness or ourselves, or, I mean, I think society has taught us as women that we are victims to our periods. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to just deal with it. So how can we kind of start to rumble with those relationships that are internal?
Yeah. So I was thinking like there's always something we can own in a circumstance, even if the circumstance is outside of our power. So like you may not have power over your physical body and feeling like it's betraying you. Let's say you have chronic pain. That sucks. But if I am like constantly complaining to me about my body, to others about my body, and I'm like blowing like the victim horn all the time, I miss out on the opportunity to make peace with my circumstance, accept me, love me, and see the possibilities of where I can own it, right? So like if I have let's say chronic pain, and I've read that maybe giving up gluten might help, right? There are some people that say it does, some people it doesn't, but you haven't given yourself to the possibility that it might help you 10%, right? So we get to own that. Like, oh, I'm going to choose to try this. I'm going to choose to grieve where I'm at. I'm going to choose to accept where my body is right now. I'm going to choose to honor the emotions that come up with the physical pain and make space for it. I'm going to choose to work my schedule so that I can have more rest time. I'm going to choose to forgive my body for what it is doing. I'm going to choose to use kind language instead of beating myself up and hating my body. Because I'll tell you what, like I've had clients that have had chronic pain. And when we get to like the forgiveness part of the work that I do, it's interesting how they're like, it's weird. I feel like my pain is less, because they start to enter into a place of self-forgiveness in the pain. And you think about like when you fight something, it generally hurts more. Like when you have like really bad cramps and you're like fighting it, versus like when you like accept the pain and you relax your body into it and you actually like, even though you feel like it's going to hurt more, like what happens when you surrender and you actually just like are gentle with yourself and you like allow the pain? What happens is your body like almost like turns the volume down slightly. Mm-hmm. Like in labor, when I was having my kids, I was like, there was one point with one of my kids, and I was really tense and really like kind of fighting where I was in the labor. And the midwife was like, don't fight it. And I was like, oh yeah. Right. And it was counterintuitive to what my body wanted to do, was like resist it. Right. And think that it was wrong. And I accepted it. And yes, it hurt, but it was able to like move what it needed to move. I was resisting the thing that my body was trying to do.
Yeah.
We often resist because we aren't in the place of ownership to even see the possibility that there's something that we might do that might make a difference. And some of that's just grieving.
I love that. In my practice, I have a lot of individuals that really latch on to a diagnosis or that being a part of their identity. Like I've worked with a lot of eating disorder clients, I work with individuals with GI issues and hormone issues. And we've talked about this in previous episodes too, is that it's really nice for people not to feel alone in what they are being diagnosed with. Say it's PMDD, say it's PCOS or infertility, and you can find groups of people who share this commonality, and there's comfort in that. But something that I am exploring with a lot of these clients is, are you holding on to that identity because you've gotten comfortable with it, or you like that is a part of who you are? They're almost afraid to let that go. And I see this as such a block to healing, and I'm wondering if you can kind of speak to that, where, I think it is a little bit of victim mentality, but really like internalizing this identity or this diagnosis as a part of who they are, and having a hard time letting that go and releasing that so that they can heal and get to the other side.
Absolutely. So here's the thing, is that our ego, our sense of self, that's our identity, like who we think we are. It's not. Oh no,
she's bringing up the ego. I hate the ego.
Well, we can love or hate the ego, but it's not going anywhere, no matter how much work we do on it. I want you to think that who we think we are is, it can change. So the thing is, like, when someone says, oh, you have this diagnosis, there is a part of you that goes, oh, that's who I am now. And the thing about identity is that your ego so wants for it to be right about who it thinks it is. So if I think I am someone who's sick and doesn't have energy, even if I have the potential for energy, or even if I have energy, my identity is so strong that it can actually zap my energy. So I want you to think, like, when you're given a diagnosis, and I'm not saying diagnoses are bad.
Of course.
I think that they can be good and they can be bad. I think that they're great for, like, here's what we can do. Now that we know where we are, so there's a roadmap to where we need to go, right? However, the danger in labels is that it is an invitation for the victim mindset to cement into a place of, this is who I am, there's no other options, and we get to feel pity for ourselves rather than grieve, right? Grieve what is, accept what is, so that we have possibilities of, how do I want to navigate this? Who do I want to be in this? What kind of future do I want in this, right? Where are my possibilities? So I have had clients who have come to me, not in a place of crisis, but coming to me, it's like, I've worked with a therapist, I have these diagnoses. I was like, cool. Those are great, but we're going to actually not use those terms right now. What we're going to focus on is one, like, character quality that you're going to develop. We're going to actually shift one piece of identity, because if we can shift identity, we can shift behavior and thoughts without, like, needing, like, this, like, super structured strategy. So if I think I am, I have a severe, what would you say? What's a good one for your people?
Yeah, infertility especially.
Yeah. So, like, I'm infertile, right? It's like, what is it that they have made up about what infertility means about them? Like, that may be their forever story, that may not be their forever story, but who are they in relation to their fertility? That's where the victim story comes in, right? Like, where we believe, like, almost like, I'm infertile, so I can't do this, and I can't do this, and I can't be this, and I can't be this, right? Versus, I'm this person. I'm honest, I'm committed, I'm connected, I'm nurturing, I'm loving, and I happen to be battling with infertility up until now. Right? Like, the idea of that it doesn't have to define who I am, but sometimes labels can feel like a death sentence of, like, that there's no more. What it does is it, like, deposits a little bit of hopelessness for some people, and for some people it offers hope, right? For someone who has, like, circling around going, like, what is this? And then they have a diagnosis, and then they have, like, a where to go. It feels great and hopeful. For other people, so that's like a story where it could be turned into ownership. And then there's other people where it's like, see, it's true. It's true. It's harder for me. Look, it's not fair. Look at her, right? That's where it becomes like that victim story. And you can tell you're in a victim story if you feel suffering. when I feel suffering, and I'm not talking about grieving someone that's dead, right? You can feel grief and not be in a victim story. And you can feel grief, be in a victim story and not be in a victim story. But like when you're in suffering about the story you make up about whatever's going on in your life, like the experience that you're in, the circumstance that you're in, what your body is doing to you, if you're suffering, it's a good sign that your ego is making up some stuff that's like adding to what is actually real. And so if you can sort out what's not actually true about you because of the infertility, then you're left with a palatable amount of things to grieve. Then you're also open to possibilities of how do I support myself in this? But if I am so overwhelmed with all the stories on top of the realness, that's like eating an elephant.
Yeah, I think this is gold, honestly, and something that many people need to hear, whether you're dealing with menstrual issues or, there's just so many things in our lives that, yeah, we don't have control over all of these situations, but we do have control over the stories that we tell ourselves, and our body is listening. Our body is always listening to what we're saying, our thoughts, and responding. And if we can rewire those thoughts, if we can change them and make a conscious effort, releasing that old piece of us. Yeah, I love all of this. I think it's so helpful for our listeners.
I think it's really interesting. We've talked about choice and possibility, and the choice and possibility that comes in when we start to accept where we are. And then it seems like from there, we kind of move into committing to something for ourselves. And I know for me, I always really struggle with the commitment because I like to make vague commitments to myself. I like to make these really vague commitments to myself. And I do this because, and Jaime, these are all things that you've taught me, but I'll make these vague commitments because it allows me to also not fail. And I get scared of that failure. So like, how can we make better, like what is a good process for us making these commitments to ourselves, whether it's about healing or whether it's about commitments with how we're going to interact with our significant other or something like that, where, like what can that process look like so we're not making vague commitments?
Yeah. So I think that one of the ways you can kind of like flush that out is to notice like, I don't want to fail, right? I don't want something, right? I'm trying to prevent something that I don't want to have happen. So that's like what our brain wants to do. We can start there. So then you can ask yourself, okay, so what do I want? And generally that's harder to come up with. What do I want that's within my control? Right? Because we could say, well, I don't want to fail. Well, I want to succeed. Okay, what do I want that's within my power? And then that becomes more specific, right? Like, well, I want to try, or I want to follow through. I want to give myself to this project. I want to show up for myself. And then you can ask yourself, okay, up until now, what has gotten in the way of that? Like what part of me, like who would I need to be? Like you give like your identity. What part of me needs to get stronger that would be resourceful for me to stay in that commitment to produce the future that I want, right? So if I say I don't want to fail, that's me being tethered to the past, some forgiveness work of where I've failed and made myself pay for it in the past, where I've judged myself, where I've been mean to myself, where I've told myself I'm not good enough or that I'm not worthy enough because I failed, right? Some forgiveness work of like, gosh, I'm really sorry. Well, I forgive myself for being a jerk face to myself. Yeah, we get so bad. That was the best choice. We thought we were protecting ourselves. And so at the same time, we can be judging ourselves of not wanting to try now and be brave now because that's me trying to love me. You don't try, you don't fail. Failing is painful. We don't want to be there. You can say like, okay, that's okay. I'm going to accept that I'm here, that I'm scared. There is a part of me that doesn't trust me to try something because I need to succeed at it. That's like what I've gauged as success is like, versus like, if I could shift it just to identity instead of like me doing the thing, right? Like do, be, have, right? I'm going to do the thing and then I'll be successful. And then I'm going to have this, I'll be worthy, right? But if we can shift to be like, well, who, if I didn't need to hold off on what I'm going to get, like, think about this. What would you give yourself? Like, what do you think you're going to feel? Who are you going to be when you succeed? Like, Monica, if you succeed, how are you going to feel about yourself? If your greatest dream comes true, the thing that you're scared to actually do, if that came true, what would you start believing about yourself?
That I'm worthy, that, I can do it on my own, that I'm capable, that I am deserving.
Okay, cool. So I want you to think that up until now, you've been fighting for the story that you're not worthy, not capable, not all those things, right? What are the odds that your ego is going to let you actually go and experience what it is to be worthy and capable and all that sort of stuff? Because you don't think you're that person.
Right.
Remember, our identity is always going to work to confirm itself. You can't outdo who you think you are, but we can invert it. Because if you already start believing that you are capable, and then bring up all the evidence of all the things that you do that you're very capable of. I am worthy. What the heck is worthiness anyways? Define it. You are already skilled. Where am I skilled? Actually start to believe that part of your identity now. Because if you don't, you're going to resist every step along the way to actually have the business goal that you want.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't align with your identity. So you we think we're going to get it's like we're running the race to get the popsicle at the end of the race, but we're somebody that doesn't believe that we're not somebody who has popsicles. So guess what we'll never do? We will never finish the race. But if we believe that we are somebody who has popsicles and we let ourselves have a popsicle and we love our popsicles and we're like, I'm somebody who has popsicles all the time. Now running the race isn't the threat. Instead of the resistance being the popsicle at the end of it, right? And experience all the things in between there. The resistance gets to get less and less and less the more I start believing and acting in accordance with my own worthiness, capableness, specificness, all those things that you might be judging yourself not to be. Just put the horse cart, just flip it. And then get really committed about being that thing. And so you think your future, the future that you want is you get to choose wherever you want in your future. But often we're coming from a place of that I think I need the right strategy to get there. And that's actually BS. What we need is actually the choice of the future that we're going to take and integrate the identity that gets it. And be willing, as I'm commit and stay committed to being that person. And as the things, all the resistance and the roadblocks and the ways that we get in our own way, because we will, as those come up, we actually are curious with them and go, oh, I wonder why that's there. I wonder why I chose that. That's cool. Okay, no bad. Right? I get to deal with the stuff, and you'll be amazed at the things, and you know this, Monica, from our work together, the stuff that pops up is just stuff that wants to be healed. That's why you want your goal in the first place, is because the journey is going to require you to heal the thing. So we can focus on the thing, make ourselves pay that we're not getting the thing, or we can go, oh, the thing is just to bring me the healing. I can offer myself that healing and that identity work now, and then I can walk with much less struggle. You're still going to struggle because growth is struggle, but it's going to something last more than a few days, like our will, I'm going to eat healthy, right? I'm going to eat healthy because it's going to help my cramps. Okay. And so you stick to it for a few days and then you start to be victim to the diet, right? Because I have to eat healthy and this is the diet I have to eat if I want my cramps to be better and I want my mood to be better and I don't want the PMS, right? I have to, right? I'm victim to it. Versus, oh no, I'm choosing it because I'm a healthy person. Because I am somebody who loves my body. I am somebody who up until now doesn't enjoy this, but if I did enjoy it, what would it look like? I'm somebody who's creative about how I can do this thing and love this thing. If I don't like this, what do I want? Versus ugh, it was too hard, I couldn't do it.
You guys, the work that Jaime does is I mean, I have a whole notebook of like highlights and notes from working together. And it's everything from if you were working on your health or a business or just yourself, like the internal dialogues that I have learned are like priceless, so amazing. So Jaime, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. To wrap things up, I have a couple lightning round questions that I wanted to ask just so that our audience can hear a little bit more about you. So ready to dive into those?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Question number one, favorite form of self-care?
I really love baths because there is something about like having time alone, the hot tub, but I also am going to say journaling, even though I, up until now, sometimes hate it. But I would say that that's bang for buck. That is the biggest resource for me in self-care. Also / walking in nature.
Yeah, I love all of those. Norah, you want to ask the next one?
Yeah. What is your favorite meal to cook?
Up until now, I don't super love cooking, but I do. I make tacos every week because I love eating them.
Tacos are also my favorite food, so we have that in common. Okay, menstrual related question. Menstrual cups or tampons or pads, or what's your menstrual dealing with choice?
Tampons.
Okay, great. And Norah, go for the last one.
Yeah. What would you say is the best investment that you've made in yourself?
Hands down, hiring my transformational coach.
Yeah. I think it's so important that we make those investments in ourselves and, differentiate an investment versus an expense when we are, purchasing, whether it's a health program or coaching program, any of those things. They're different, an investment versus an expense. It's just different. You're going to get something out of making an investment in yourself. All right, Jaime, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is Unstuckologist, or on my website, which is JaimeGordonLifeCoaching.com.
You guys, I can't recommend Jaime enough if you're looking for support, whether it is with business or just with growing yourself. She is so amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week.